The human ambassador stood in the grand hall, observing the scene as the massive doors opened. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed as the Galactic Empire's delegation entered, their presence as overwhelming as the sleek, dark ships they'd arrived in. Their armor, adorned with symbols of countless victories, seemed to shimmer under the hall's lights. Eyes of varied colors and shapes, some slitted, others glowing, gazed at the gathered humans with the quiet arrogance of conquerors. The ambassador kept his expression neutral, a calm contrast to the stern faces around him. Earth's finest diplomats and military officials had gathered, their tension visible. Behind the ambassador, whispers flowed as the delegates, each representing a different species, took their places. They looked outlandish by human standards, tall, lanky figures with elongated arms, another with skin a metallic sheen, yet another with tentacles instead of legs. They were here to demand humanity's obedience, and their confidence was unmistakable. The Empire's lead envoy stepped forward, his voice amplified, his tone dismissive. He began without any formalities, addressing the room as if speaking to inferiors. "People of Earth," he said, voice dripping with contempt, "you have been deemed a tribute planet under the dominion of the Galactic Empire. You will provide what is demanded, or face the full might of the Empire." His gaze swept over the humans with an expression that was both bored and amused. An official tried to respond, his voice trembling slightly, but the ambassador raised a hand, silencing him with a slight nod. The ambassador's quiet authority calmed the room. He gave the envoy a courteous nod, inviting him to continue, his silence conveying both patience and caution. The envoy's expression flickered with irritation before he continued. "You shall surrender to us the following: rare minerals, in quantities dictated by the Empire, as well as your finest human recruits, who will serve our forces," the envoy stated, a thin, predatory smile crossing his face. "Compliance is non-negotiable. Your cooperation will ensure your survival. Refusal." He trailed off, the unspoken threat hanging in the air. Behind him, his guards adjusted their stances, clearly anticipating resistance. The ambassador's gaze remained steady, even as tension thickened. He could sense his colleagues' unease, hear the slight shift of feet, the barely audible intakes of breath around him. But he remained unruffled, a pillar of calm amidst the silent storm. This was a tactic he knew. The Empire's envoy wanted to unsettle, to unnerve, to shake humanity before the real negotiations even began. "We have heard of your technology," another alien added, a faint sneer on his face. "You call those ships? And you think those weapons will help you? We have conquered worlds who wield powers you can't even fathom. You, with your primitive rockets and digital toys, are no different from the many others who have fallen in line." The laughter that followed was more contemptuous than amused, and several other delegates exchanged glances, clearly entertained by Earth's supposed inferiority. The ambassador tilted his head, absorbing each word, betraying nothing. He let the aliens speak, their insults rolling off him like water off a rock. He had a clear picture now of their confidence, their belief that humanity would be cowed by a display of grandeur and superiority. They had judged humans as fragile, weak, a mistake, he thought, that he'd let them cling to a little longer. The lead envoy leaned in, a smug smirk on his face. "You have one Earth rotation to decide. Submit peacefully, or experience the consequences of defiance." His voice, laced with mockery, filled the room. The words hung in the air, each syllable delivered as if to taunt, to provoke. He watched the humans, clearly expecting fear, perhaps even begging. The ambassador finally nodded, an almost imperceptible gesture. "I see," he said softly, his voice calm, composed. He looked directly into the envoy's eyes, holding the stare, his face expressionless. A flicker of confusion passed over the envoy's face, but he quickly masked it with a condescending smile. His final warning delivered, he and his entourage turned and strode out of the room, the sound of their footsteps echoing behind them. As the last of the Empire's representatives left, a silence settled over the room. It was tense, charged, filled with an unspoken challenge. The ambassador stood for a moment longer, his back straight, his gaze fixed on the doors that had just closed behind the delegation. Only when he was certain the aliens were out of earshot did he finally exhale, his expression shifting to one of steely resolve. The officials around him began murmuring anxiously, their voices low, worried. "They expect us to submit," one of them said, his voice filled with disbelief and frustration. "They think we're no different from the others." The ambassador's gaze shifted to him, a faint but determined glint in his eyes. "Let them think that," he said quietly, his tone calm but unyielding. He knew the choice that lay before humanity was not one to be made lightly. But he also knew that if the Empire thought Earth would simply bow, they had vastly underestimated the spirit of humanity. The hall was packed with Earth's officials, each one tense as they waited for the Empire's envoy to begin his announcement. The ambassador stood at the front, unflinching, arms crossed, eyes focused as the envoy took his place with a smirk, his voice dripping with disdain. "Earth," the envoy began, "will become a tribute planet, and like all planets under our rule, you will contribute to the prosperity of the Empire. It is not a choice, it is an honor we bestow upon you." His gaze moved slowly across the gathered humans, as if taking in their expressions of discomfort with satisfaction. "Your tribute is a necessity, and you will comply without complaint if you value your continued existence." The ambassador's face remained impassive, but those around him exchanged glances, their unease evident. A few officials shifted in their seats as the envoy continued, his voice louder, more insistent. "Your planet's mineral resources, particularly your rare elements, will be harvested at levels dictated by the Empire. Furthermore, we require what you consider your best and brightest young men and women to serve in our Imperial forces. Their contributions will serve the greater order of the galaxy. You will provide a fixed number of these individuals annually, as well as the designated quotas of minerals, food supplies, and technological assets." The human officials' faces grew more strained, the shock and anger beginning to show. The Empire's envoy paused, letting his demands hang in the air. He continued, enjoying the effect of his words. "Failure to comply with any part of these terms will result in corrective measures. And know this," he added, his voice colder. "These measures will not be ones that Earth can withstand." A murmur of indignation rippled through the hall. Several officials leaned forward, eyes blazing, but the ambassador raised a hand subtly, silencing them. The envoy noticed this and sneered, addressing the ambassador directly. "You think your silence is wise?" he mocked, tilting his head, his voice thick with condescension. "Your silence will not shield you from reality. You have no chance against the Empire. What forces could you possibly have that could compare to ours? We have seen your technology, it's rudimentary at best. Your weapons and defenses are centuries behind our own." He gestured to a holographic projection that flickered to life above him. The image of an imposing Empire fleet filled the space, countless warships looming over planets much larger than Earth. The envoy continued, his tone laced with superiority. "We conquered the Velen coalition in less than a rotation. We brought down the Zephyr Alliance in a matter of hours. Their fleets were worlds ahead of yours, and yet they fell." The officials watched, their jaws clenched, as the hologram shifted to an image of towering war machines, weapons Earth scientists had barely imagined. "This is the power of the Empire," the envoy said, smiling smugly. "We are as far beyond you as you are beyond the simplest microbes on your world. Do you honestly believe you have any means of resistance?" The ambassador's face was calm, revealing nothing as he listened. But he noted the reactions around him, the subtle flinches, the flicker of fear in the eyes of his colleagues. He understood the impact of these displays, designed to intimidate and instill doubt. The Empire was relying on psychological warfare as much as physical threats, counting on fear to break Earth's resolve before any battle could even begin. The envoy's voice softened, almost as if he were offering them mercy. "This is the simple reality, humans. The sooner you accept it, the fewer of you will suffer. Submit now, and you will be allowed to live under our rule peacefully. Resist, and you will know the depths of our power. You have one Earth rotation, one day, to make your decision." His gaze lingered on the ambassador, as if daring him to respond. The ambassador held his stare, his expression unwavering. The envoy waited, his smile faltering slightly as the silence stretched on, but the ambassador gave no reply. The envoy's smirk returned as he turned on his heel, clearly convinced of Earth's inevitable submission. As the Empire's delegates filed out, the hall erupted into whispers and worried exchanges. Several officials turned to the ambassador, their expressions a mix of anger, confusion, and fear. One spoke up, his voice a harsh whisper. "They want everything. Our resources, our people, our future. And they think we'll just hand it over." Another official chimed in, fists clenched. "They're playing with us. Showing off their power, trying to scare us into submission. But if we don't, if they're telling the truth..." The ambassador listened, his face contemplative. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but resolute. "The Empire has conquered countless worlds. They've learned that fear is a powerful tool. It keeps planets in line, saves them from having to fight. But Earth isn't like those worlds. Our strength lies in our will, our adaptability. They assume we'll be frightened into submission, that we'll fold the moment they show us their power." He looked around the room, meeting each gaze firmly. "But they're wrong. We may be outmatched in numbers, in technology, even in experience, but we have something they don't anticipate: unity, resilience, and a refusal to be subjugated." The officials around him nodded slowly, the fear in their eyes replaced by a spark of determination. The ambassador allowed himself a brief smile, knowing that Earth's response would be one the Empire could never have expected. The ambassador rose to his feet, standing tall in the hall, his gaze steady as he prepared to address the gathered officials. All eyes turned to him, their expressions expectant, anxious, waiting to see if he would bend to the Empire's ultimatum. He knew what was at stake: Earth's freedom, its future, and the choice to live without kneeling to an alien oppressor. He took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice calm but unyielding. "We are faced with an empire that views us as nothing more than a stepping stone in their conquest." He started, his tone measured yet resolute. "They see Earth as another resource to exploit, another people to subdue and add to their empire's vast list of subjugated worlds." His words echoed through the hall, and he could see the determination beginning to replace fear in the faces around him. "Earth's history is full of challenges. Our past is marked by hardship, by resilience, and by a fierce commitment to freedom. We have faced adversities that pushed us to our limits, and yet, we rose each time, stronger and more united. The Galactic Empire expects us to surrender because they see us as weak, as a lesser species that will bow before their might." His gaze swept over the audience, locking eyes with each official who watched him with renewed resolve. "But they misunderstand what it means to be human." He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. "The Empire believes they are invincible, that their power will crush our spirit. They've shown us their fleets, their weapons, their history of domination. They are confident that we'll comply out of fear. But we will not give them that satisfaction. Earth is not a world that yields to oppression. We have never, and we will never, surrender our right to live as we choose." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, and the ambassador could feel the energy shifting, the fear dissipating, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. "We are capable of far more than they believe. Our strength isn't in weapons or technology alone, it's in our spirit, our unity, and our resilience. They may have advanced fleets and 1,000 worlds under their control, but they don't understand the power of a species willing to fight for its freedom." He let those words linger, watching as the officials began nodding, their faces set with determination. He continued, his voice growing stronger, each word a declaration of defiance. "We will not be intimidated into silence. We will not be bullied into giving up what is ours. If they demand tribute, then let them know that the only tribute we offer is our refusal to be enslaved. Let them hear it loud and clear: we will not bow." Silence filled the room, thick with the weight of his words. The officials around him stood a little taller, each of them grasping the resolve that radiated from their ambassador. He could see it in their faces, a shared conviction, a readiness to stand against the odds, whatever it took. The ambassador's voice softened, but his tone remained unbreakable. "This isn't just about Earth. It's about setting an example, about showing the Empire, and the entire galaxy, that we will not be conquered. Our stand is more than just a defense of our planet. It's a statement that humanity will not be another footnote in their history of conquest. One of the younger officials spoke up, his voice steady, filled with the same determination. They think they're unstoppable, that their power is absolute. But they don't know us. They don't know what we're capable of when pushed to our limits. The ambassador nodded, his gaze fierce. Exactly. They see our technology, our numbers, and they assume they understand us. But our greatest strength lies in the unexpected. We have always found ways to adapt, to evolve, to push beyond what seems possible. They look at us and see weakness. But when the time comes, they will realize that Earth does not submit. He took a step forward, his eyes blazing with conviction. Let them come. Let them throw everything they have at us. We will face it with everything we are, with every ounce of courage, every piece of ingenuity, every drop of our unbreakable will. We are not just defending Earth, we are defending our right to exist as a free people. And if that means going to war, then we will go to war. We will fight, not because we seek conflict, but because we refuse to be slaves. The hall was silent, but it was a silence filled with unity, a collective understanding of what lay ahead. Each official felt the weight of the decision, yet none flinched. They knew what was at stake, and they were ready to face it, whatever the cost. The ambassador's voice dropped to a steady whisper, but each word rang clear. This is our message to the Empire. Earth stands united. We are prepared, and we will not yield. They may bring their fleets, their weapons, their armies, but they will never conquer our spirit. With that, the room erupted in quiet, determined agreement, a collective resolve solidifying with each passing second. They knew the odds were against them, but the decision was made. They would stand, they would fight, and they would show the Empire the strength of a united humanity. As the Empire's fleet entered Earth's orbit, they expected a swift and easy victory. Their warships glided over Earth's cities, casting shadows that covered miles, projecting an image of total dominance. The Empire's commanders had already begun celebrating, convinced this would be yet another quick conquest to add to their growing list. They saw no sign of resistance, only a silent planet, as if frozen in fear. But Earth's silence was strategic. Below, humanity waited, every defense system on high alert. The ambassador, calm and focused, gave the signal, and in an instant, Earth's hidden power surged to life. Massive EMP blasts exploded in the atmosphere, targeted directly at the Empire's most advanced ships. Energy surged, circuits fried, and before they knew it, several of the Empire's key warships went dark, their power systems paralyzed, leaving them vulnerable and drifting helplessly in orbit. The Empire's commanders scrambled, shocked by the sudden disruption. But Earth's response was only beginning. From hidden bases across the globe, human-crafted drones and fighters launched with precision, equipped with technologies the Empire hadn't anticipated. Earth had spent years preparing for this, studying the Empire's tactics, understanding their weaknesses, and now, they'd put that knowledge to use. Unlike the Empire's heavily armored ships, Earth's fighters were agile, moving in and out of enemy lines with calculated strikes. The Empire's response was chaotic, unprepared for the guerrilla-style warfare that Earth deployed. Human fighters darted in unexpected patterns, disabling systems, cutting off communication lines, and executing strikes that seemed random yet precise. The Empire's soldiers were trained for brute force, for overwhelming power, but humanity used adaptability and strategy to compensate for their smaller numbers. Each hit from the human forces was targeted, every strike aimed at weakening the Empire's colossal fleet. On board the Empire's flagship, the commanders were growing increasingly desperate. Reports flooded in, ships down, communication lines severed, entire squadrons wiped out. They could hardly believe it. The species they had dismissed as inferior, as primitive, was holding its ground. And not just holding, but pushing back, forcing the Empire to adapt to tactics they hadn't prepared for. Back on Earth, the ambassador coordinated every move with precision. He had trusted humanity's resilience, believed in their capacity to fight beyond their limits, and now he watched as his faith was realized. As Earth's forces struck with relentless efficiency, he could sense the Empire's shock. They had never anticipated resistance, and certainly not this level of coordinated defiance. This wasn't just defense, it was a calculated, unrelenting fight for survival. The Empire's commanders, realizing they were losing control, ordered a more aggressive strike. They unleashed their most powerful weapons, sending beams of energy toward Earth's major cities. But Earth's defenses held. Hidden shields flickered to life around key locations, absorbing the energy blasts, dispersing them harmlessly into the atmosphere. Humanity had prepared for this. They had studied the Empire's weaponry, predicted their attack patterns, and constructed barriers that left the Empire's most powerful weapons ineffective. Frustration and panic spread through the Empire's ranks. They couldn't understand how a planet they had deemed so insignificant had managed to build defenses that could withstand their full arsenal. The commanders tried to regroup, but Earth's forces pressed their advantage, taking down ship after ship, leaving the Empire's fleet in disarray. In a last-ditch effort, the Empire attempted a ground invasion, deploying troops across Earth's surface, determined to bring humanity to its knees through sheer force. But they were met with fierce resistance at every turn. Human forces, from trained military to civilians defending their homes, rose up, refusing to yield a single inch of their land. The Empire's soldiers, used to swift victories, were overwhelmed by Earth's coordinated and relentless defense. On the ground, humanity's spirit shone brightest. Every strike, every movement was precise, a testament to the ambassador's strategy and humanity's unbreakable will. Earth's defenders fought with a purpose the Empire's soldiers couldn't match. They weren't fighting for conquest or power. They were fighting for survival, for freedom, for the right to remain unbowed. In the streets, in the fields, and in the skies, humanity held the line, pushing back against an empire that had never faced such defiance. The Empire's fleet, now reduced to fragments, limped back, retreating in disbelief. They had come to Earth expecting tribute, submission, and yet they were forced to leave with nothing but loss and humiliation. As the remaining ships disappeared into the void, Earth's people stood victorious, bloodied but unbroken, a world that had refused to bow. Word of Earth's defiance spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Planets that had long submitted to the Empire's rule began to whisper of rebellion, inspired by the species that had dared to stand against impossible odds. The ambassador, watching the Empire's retreat from the ground below, felt a swell of pride. Humanity had faced the impossible, and they had not only survived, they had won. As the Empire licked its wounds, it realized that Earth was no mere planet to be conquered. Humanity had proven that strength wasn't solely in numbers or technology. It was in resilience, in adaptability, in an unyielding spirit. And as the ambassador stood amidst the aftermath, surrounded by his fellow humans, he knew this victory was only the beginning. Earth had declared its place in the galaxy, and no empire, no matter how vast, would ever forget the day humanity stood up and said, "No."